Hello, people of YouTube. So, leave no trace. Is it a load of old rubbish? Or is it about saving the planet? So first of all, on this channel there's several people. The main two people running the channel are me and my partner Issa, and there's other guests, and Ben gets involved too, who you see in some of the videos. But this is my opinion, okay? It's not any of their opinions, so don't judge the whole channel on it. This is just me, what I'm saying, my opinion, and that's all it is, an opinion. Like with a lot of things, you know, nowadays it tends to get a bit political. Everyone wants to be right, everyone wants the virtue signal, and it comes from a good place most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't, but it tends to create these extremes. So people want to be extreme one way or extreme the other way. Sometimes you end up with people just dividing in half completely, and that's happened a little bit with Leave No Trace. If you don't know, which you should know if you're watching this video anyway, but LNT, sometimes you see the hashtag LNT or Leave No Trace, and it's about going wild camping and leaving no trace. See, what you have nowadays is obviously some people that probably have never even heard of it. They're not what I would really call proper wild campers. We're talking about teenagers or just disrespectful people who don't really care about nature. They're just going out there to get drunk and do whatever. Nothing wrong with going out and get drunk in the woods, but they leave all their crap behind. You know, plastic bags, cans, bottles, just rubbish everywhere. Have massive ridiculous fires, burn the crap out of everything, and are just generally disrespectful. But I don't think they're really part of the wild camping community. It's not like they're purposely opposing it. Then, and these people are within the wild camping community, you've got the Leave No Trace people. And I do believe in Leave No Trace to a point, but like with a lot of things, although the slogan is Leave No Trace, it's physically impossible. Like, you are an animal imposing yourself on the environment one way or another. If you're not doing it in your home with your electricity and your water and your computers and your cameras like I'm using now, charging your batteries and buying gear, and then you're doing it out in nature. And arguably the impact is much smaller with just you in a backpack and a tent or a tarp or whatever in the woods, having a little contained fire. The damage is arguably a lot less than what we're doing in the modern world. I know one doesn't negate the other, so it's not an argument to say, you know, you're using a computer at home, therefore why are you worried about having a fire in the woods? They are two different things, so I wouldn't really use that as an argument, but you can't ever leave no trace. What we really mean when we say leave no trace is leave as little trace as possible while still doing your thing. Don't just be completely flippant with it. But that's a long slogan, that's a bit of a long hashtag, so obviously it just gets shortened to Leave No Trace. And the other extreme is the Leave No Trace Nazi, is what I call them. So they're dead against any kind of fire whatsoever. There's been a real growth in popularity of these little fireboxes. I think it started with like the Bush box. There's Lixada are doing them on Amazon now. I've just recently bought the One Tigress version, and it's just a stainless steel pieces of metal that clip together to make a little box. You can keep the fire in there, off the ground, you can cook things on it. And for a lot of people, it's not just for cooking on, it's a way to have a small fire in the woods without burning holes in the ground. So a good idea in principle, but it depends, you know, what sort of fire you're going to have, because if I have a small contained fire on the ground, but I just put some wet or rotten wood down, something or other. I've even done it where I've dug a shallow hole, put a fire blanket in there, put the soil back on top, so only the soil above the fire blanket gets damaged. There's lots of different ways you can do it, but the point is I used this box and it still singed the ground. So a lot of people are using those bush boxes saying that it's a leave no trace way of having a fire, and it's really not, because I don't see that it's actually that much, if any, better than just having a small contained fire and putting some base blocks down and then making sure that it's put out before you go to bed, or, you know, if it's a cold or wet night, it might just burn out by itself. Obviously, you've still got to be careful. You've always got to be careful when you have a fire. What I see on certain Facebook groups and stuff is people hammering other people for having a tiny little fire. And then they just really want to be right. They want to win the argument so bad that they'll come up with anything, you know, like, well, I only use gas canister stoves and I only use it for a maximum to just boil the water once in my whole trip, and I won't use it any more than that. And everyone wants to be better than everyone else, okay? Like, it just... And like I say, I do believe in the leave no trace thing, but there becomes a point where it's not about the environment anymore, it's about you and your ego, and you wanting to be right and wanting to put other people down. And that's where it just loses its way, and you lose all respect from anyone, and people just stop listening to you at that point. The real thing that you need to get behind with leave no trace, to be honest, the easiest thing that we can all agree on is the litter. So when you go camping, obviously, you're going to bring things with you. If you want to have a beer or whatever, you can have cans and stuff like that. It's not really a lot, even if you put it in a bag and strap it to the back of your rucksack when you leave, it's not going to weigh you down or anything. By then, if you've drunk your beers, you've had your food, everything's empty. I mean, I just don't get it. I see like so much of it. Even just going for a little walk locally today, I saw just a bag of stuff just dumped in a bush. You know, it's weird. And when you go camping, or when you go to the woods, sometimes you see entire setups, a whole tent even, and just loads of stuff everywhere. I just don't understand that, and that is, I guarantee you, that's not proper wild campers or people with any interest in nature and the environment, which is what, for a lot of us, is the reason we'll go out there, to be a bit closer to some sort of nature. And there isn't a lot of it left in Great Britain, well, in England especially. Most of the forests are gone, unfortunately, so what there is left we have to protect. And that's part of the argument why, you know, okay, you've got a house and you're running a car and you've got your computers, and they're all things that you need to work and live and have a reasonable life. But that's already there, you know, whereas the forests, there isn't much left of it. So really, really protect that. So I get that argument. The other thing is, though, is natural litter. So some people don't like the ground being disturbed and, you know, a pile of sticks being left there or something like that. To me, it's like, you know, we're humans, we're on this planet, we're just another animal. I mean, if you see footprints of an animal or scratches on a tree from an animal, you don't get angry about it. So I'm not sure why leaving sort of a pile of dead sticks there is a major problem. Again, I think that's a bit extremist, leaving a trace Nazi, really, because a pile of sticks is a pile of sticks. You're always going to have an impact. You can't, if the hashtag was leave no impact, I'd be dead against it, because you can't have no impact. You're living on this planet. And I've said that a few times now, but there is some arguments for small fires as well. You've got to remember that we've been making fire for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Nature is cleverer than you. And it might be a hard pill to swallow for some people, but as a pagan, actually, that's something that obviously I really embrace. Nature is God to me, so nature is the be all and end all. It is way cleverer than we could ever imagine. And obviously it doesn't mean, that's a metaphorical mean, it's not clever as in like it's got its own brain and thought process, but through trial and error and evolution and everything, over millions of years, ways are found of sustaining themselves in nature. Equilibriums are found. When you cut down a forest and replant it, it doesn't grow back the same. Or it takes thousands of years to get to how it was, because different trees will fight for position and plants will come back and animals have to come in, and all different things fight against each other until they find a balance and equilibrium or somewhere where they can balance. There's always going to be a bit of a fight going on, but you'll find that really, really old forests, they tend to have a bit more space in them for animals to move around in, create habitats, and obviously in the past for us to hunt. I remember seeing that on a program before actually, where they were talking about like sustainable deforestation or logging or whatever, and this tribe was saying that they'd cut down the forest, but then they moved on, they leave it to grow back, or they plant new trees, but it grew back so dense that they couldn't actually hunt in there anymore, and there was hardly any animals left there because the animals couldn't live in it. The trees were too dense. The animals that you did see a little glimmer of, you try and fire your bow and arrow or whatever, and it's gone. You can't really see what you're shooting at. So a lot of these ideas that we come up with for renewing nature, it all sounds good on paper, it doesn't really work in practice. You're best to just leave nature to it. And so there is an argument for, still you shouldn't have big fires, but a small fire can do some things with the soil. It can renew the nutrients in the soil somewhat. There's various other things. I'm not really an expert on it, but I have read about those things. So there is an argument for it. And that's what I mean. There's no, like, unless you're actually an expert, don't really come heavy-handed with your opinion, you know? And coming back to gas stoves and all the gear you use, overall, it's not really better for the environment. I understand you're not burning that bit of forest, and like I said, the forest is few and far between in England, so don't damage it. But there's not many of us actually doing this, you know, so the odd little contained fire here and there. Which brings me to an argument that people often use, which is, well, if it's all very well, but if everyone was doing it, there'd be fire pits everywhere. And it reminded me of an argument that people use against vegans. And I'm not vegan, but I understand their position, and it is hard really to argue against it logically. If you really be honest with yourself and be logical when you're debating with a vegan, it's very difficult to win. Because, so one of the things that people say anyway, meat eaters will say, is when you talk about cows and the methane they produce, and, you know, everyone should stop eating beef or whatever, people say, well,
if everyone stops eating beef, there'll be millions of cows left. What are we going to do with them? Then they'll all have to be killed. Then you're killing loads of animals.
Whatever. It's a strange argument, but I sort of understand where they're coming from, but it's nonsense. Because the whole idea of it is nonsense, because they're saying that what if everyone became vegan overnight? Which is just never going to happen. And everyone isn't overnight going to become wild campers and go out and have fires in the woods. That's just not going to happen. Okay, so it's a tiny percentage of the people that are actually going out and camping and wild camping and having fires. It's a tiny, tiny percentage. You know, the disrespectful people that aren't really wild campers, you're always going to get them. Yeah, crack down on them, whatever, you know. You're not going to have a situation where tomorrow suddenly the whole of Great Britain wakes up and decides, I want to go wild camping and have fires. It's always going to be a very small percentage of people. Most people want to be tucked up at home in the warm. Trust me, they're not interested. So that whole argument is nonsense. It's a bit like a documentary made by the same people that made Cowspiracy. There's a new one on Netflix called Seaspiracy, which I watched the other day. And they were talking about the amount of plastic in the ocean and how there was this big campaign to get rid of plastic straws, single-use plastic and all this. And then, as I say, it's kind of a diversion because that is like a drop in the ocean, excuse the pun, in comparison to fishing nets, plastic fishing nets, which makes up for, I think it was about 50% or more of all the plastic in the ocean is fishing nets, not straws. Straws are like 0.03%. So they're concentrating on this tiny impact when there's something much bigger that nobody's talking about. And I feel like you get that a lot with the whole Leave No Trace thing, where people are concentrating on tiny things where in their everyday lives, you know, if they really do care about the environment, in their everyday lives, they couldn't give a shit. You know, they live their lives like nothing else matters. Like, they don't think about the environment in any way. And then when it comes to wild camping, you know, they'll hammer someone just for having a tiny little fire. It's like, look at your life, man. You're driving a diesel car and, you know, you're making YouTube videos like I do with all this gear. So it's one thing to have your principles, but when you're going out there and bashing away and having a go at other people for what they're doing, well, you better be pretty squeaky clean if you're going to do that. And that's why I don't try and force my opinions too much on other people and ram them down people's throat and be really aggressive with them, because at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do. Or I put out a YouTube video and you can watch it or you can not watch it. It's up to you. So I'm sure this opens up a massive discussion. But it's funny because the same community, which I suppose I'm part of, which believes in no trace and really wants to stop it, are also the same people that want to continue wild camping and continue doing it. I mean, the people that are not leaving any trace really are the people that are staying at home. So maybe you should just stay at home if you feel that strongly about it. But I think, you know, get out there, do it, enjoy nature, leave as little trace as possible. I personally am not against a small fire. There, I've said it. You don't have to agree with me, it's up to you. But I know what I'm doing with a fire. I wouldn't let it get out of control. But yeah, it's the same with the same community that are getting out there and doing that is opposed to talk of new laws coming in that may make it more difficult to do. So they're trying to bring in new laws. Well, they have brought in a new law, I'm not sure, which actually is designed to stop people from kind of illegally just settling on land. Wild camping is technically not really allowed, but kind of is. People tolerate it. It's a civil matter, not really a legal matter, unless you start doing something else like becoming aggressive. So, you know, they're against the laws that might prevent people from going out camping in the woods and leaving a mess. But at the same time, you want to stop people from going out and camping in the woods and leaving a mess. So the idea is to educate people, I suppose, and that's what Leave No Trace should be about, really, is just educating people that maybe aren't that aware. Not about just bashing each other for the tiniest little thing. So I think ideally, you know, we would all want some sort of clever law where it would allow respectful people to go out and wild camp, but would stop disrespectful people from going out wild camping. But I'm not sure how that law would look, and that would be a bit difficult to enforce, really. The last thing I want to say is I hope the whole Leave No Trace thing doesn't create some sort of strange backlash. I don't think it would, but I hope it doesn't, because like I said at the beginning, like with a lot of things, when you get one extreme, you always get the other extreme. And like I said, in this case, I think the other extreme is not really part of the same community as the people that are saying Leave No Trace. But it could happen within the wild camping community. You could end up with a whole bunch of people that are so fed up with it being thrown in their face all the time and being, you know, slagged off on Facebook or whatever for the slightest little thing, that they'll just start having even bigger fires just to rub it in your face. And that would be a shame. You know, it's like the rise of the right wing politically is generally because the left wing just push too far and become hypocrites, and then the right wing unfortunately ends up getting more powerful. And so really the left wing kick themselves in the teeth there. If they just calm down a bit, you wouldn't load the gun for the opposite side to pick up the people in the middle who don't share your extreme values and say, look, come this way, we're against them. And that's how people get taken in by the opposite side of the extreme. Because most of us are somewhere in the middle. We're reasonable thinking people. And once this side starts to rise up, the people in the middle are like, well, we don't like the way this is going. And then this side goes, we've got an answer, come with us. And this side rises up. And that's always going to be the battle in politics with right wing, left wing. And I think Leave No Trace is like a nowhere near comparable, obviously, but it's a tiny micro version of what's going on there. Mainly with the fires. I think everyone agrees, don't leave litter. There's groups on Facebook for bushcraft and wild camping and stuff like that have become so against fires that it just gets to the point where they're just insulting people. And then they just went and started another group for like fire friendly wild camping and bushcraft and stuff. Where they just post non-stop pictures of fires in the woods. And so you're not going to stop it, you know, if that's someone's opinion, you're not really going to change their mind to that extreme. The evidence that they've seen suggests to them that having a small fire contained is not really a massive problem. Then that's their research in it. I just want to reiterate that obviously I do support and believe in Leave No Trace, even though it's impossible to leave no trace. I hope I didn't come across as too negative towards it, because like I say, it is a good simple hashtag. It is getting the message out there. But I think some people, mostly people on Facebook with nothing better to do really, have created a lot of controversy around it. I think people that you meet in real life are probably going to be, especially when you talk to people face to face, they're a bit more reasonable. So yeah, that's it. That's just my opinion on it. Like I say, it's not even everyone involved in this channel's opinion. It's just my opinion on it. So if you have listened to the whole thing, thanks for bearing with me and listening. And yeah, put down in the comments your opinions. Let's not just have it turn into a massive argument. I don't think we've got enough viewers to have a massive argument anyway, but when there's two extremes, normally the truth is somewhere in the middle. Thanks for watching.